Alright people, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you'll know when I upload the next video and you'll be supporting my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Every time I upload a new video, I'll be tweeting. Horus and gentlemen, reaction. This is Adeptus Custodes, Warhammer 40,000 by the channel The Templin Institute. Yeah. Templin Institute is a great channel. I love reacting to this one about Warhammer 40k lore. It's kind of in brief, not like Lutin who goes in detail, I guess. So yeah, these men are my bodyguards. Their lives forfeit to the guarantee of my physical safety. Of their loyalty to me there shall be no question, no doubt. I and I alone shall have the authority to stand in judgment over them. No other commander shall they have in battle nor in service. None shall bar them from me, and none shall hamper or stall their missions. Okay, so that's Emperor talking about. So yeah, Adeptus Custodes, I guess, they are extremely powerful. They are personal guard of the Emperor. Since Warhammer 40k also takes lots of thing from a real world situation, like the coups and things that happen during the Horus Heresy, is lots of events like that happen in our real world. So this, in the history, always the emperor's guard, like how in Roman times Praetorians and things like that are always better trained and more badass than everybody else because they are emperor's guard, that kind of thing. So these are like that. These are better than every other space marine and things like that. They are taller, 10 foot tall, and it's just badass all around. Older ones were probably wearing leather or something, apparently. I saw that if the emperor text to speech device thing. But yeah, so let's go this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. By subscribing, you'll be supporting my channel, and I know which type of videos to react to more, or near 10,000. And check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast or playlists like Warhammer 40k with all my Warhammer 40k videos, and then John Tron, Internet Historian, history, things like that. Yeah, let's do this one.
Within the many institutions of the Imperium of Man, endurance is as rare as it is desirable. Over its 10,000 years of existence, there are few things that can be said to have truly survived the fires of war, the schemes of political rivals, or the furnaces of the censor. And yet, upon holy terror there persists one organization that has been present from the very beginning. Its members bore witness to the tragedy of the Horus Heresy, the madness of the Age of Apostasy, and the long years of stagnation and decline. In the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, they wore across the battlefields of a galaxy torn in two, the heralds of a fabled Primarch from legend. They are the Emperor's original enforcers, his closest advisors, his bodyguards, and his first gene kin. They were the messengers of his will, the keepers of his darkest secrets, the sworn guardians of his seat of power. They alone understand the imperial truth in its original form. They alone remember terror before the days of unification, and they alone know the true purpose of the Golden Throne. Even now, they stand even above the holy warrior brotherhood of the Adeptus Astartes, just as the Astartes stand above the masses of common humanity. Each one is a champion and a hero unto himself. In a cruel twist, this valor is perhaps their greatest flaw, for despite all their heroism and all their sacrifice, they have failed in their ultimate duty. They are the Brotherhood of Demigods, the Golden Legion, the Emperor's 10,000. They are known by 1,000 names, but to the galaxy as a whole, they are the Adeptus Custodes.
I guess he's referring to the Horus Heresy event where Emperor fought Horus and got fucked up, basically, both of them. That's not really their fault, is it? Adeptus Custodes' fault, because Emperor went to the ship saying nobody interfere or something like that and just wanted to face Horus himself. During that exchange, right? Basically, he got badly damaged. Even the Primarch, one of the Primarchs also died there. The brother of Horus. So, Basically, it's not really Adeptus Custodes' fault, but I guess I can see how the sentence makes sense. Regardless of what it was their duty, and they failed in that.
The Custodes originated in the half-remembered days of the Terran Unification Wars. Drawn from the children of Terra's nobility, even as the wars to consolidate the Emperor's rule across the planet still raged. The Custodes were bodyguards and hostages both. Taken in late infancy, each was resculpted through a long-forgotten process of biogenetic alchemy, more grueling than even the creation of modern Primaris Astartes. The result was a warrior greater in stature, reflex, mind, and might than anything seen before. Every Custodes was a genetic work of art, closer to the Emperor's own Primarchs than to the Thunder Warriors who served as his first genetically enhanced army. Indeed, when the Thunder Warriors had served their purpose in uniting Earth, and the time came for them, as outdated and unreliable prototypes, to be quietly retired, it was the Custodes that carried out the bloody deed atop Mount Ararat. Through the long years of the Great Crusade, the Custodes filled a multitude of roles. Primarily, they were the Emperor's personal bodyguard and war host, accompanying him on campaigns and aiding in the search for his lost sons. One of their most significant deployments was to the world of Gyros Thravian. With the Emperor at their head, they saved the Primarchs Horus Lupercal, Rogel Dawn, and Mortarion from destruction at the hands of the immense Orc warboss, Garkul Blackfang. It is said that of the 1,000 custodians to be deployed, only 3 fell, at the cost of 100,000 orcs.
Damn.
The names of these 3 fallen Custodes were carved into the Emperor's armor, an accolade awarded not even to his own sons. It is also likely that the Custodes were present during the persecution of the 2 lost Primarchs and their legions, though, as with anything relating to the Forgotten and the Purged, nearly all has been lost to myth and legend.
Alright, wait a second. First of all, how the fuck, right, this makes sense nowadays? I mean, in 41st millennia at least. Because nowadays they just stand around the Emperor's palace, right? Because they just have to guard Emperor. That's their job. Before that, right, they were riding with Emperor to find Emperor's sons, the Primarchs, right? So they had their thing. They fought, saved Primarchs, like, said in here. But there was battles they were involved in. Nowadays, they just guard Emperor. And how many times Emperor gets attacked anyway? So the best of the best specimen, right, are getting rusted away. Basically just standing their guard on the palaces, not moving apparently for a long time, just standing there, as we saw in one of the videos. That's just fucking ridiculous.
In addition to their role as warriors and guardians of the Emperor, the Custodians acted as emissaries between the Emperor and his Primarchs. They were entrusted with carrying his orders, relaying information on the progress of the Great Crusade, and ensuring that his vision of a united galaxy came to pass. In a move that speaks of some limited vision of things to come, some were also assigned to keep watch over those Primarchs who had failed to meet the Emperor's standards of a rapid, secular conquest of humanity. Chief amongst them was the soon-to-be Minister of Chaos Absolute, Lorgar Aurelian. Such steps were not sufficient to prevent the great cataclysm of the Horus Heresy, and when the time came for the traitors to show their true colors, the Custodes assigned to the traitor legions were isolated from their support. None would survive long enough to report back to the Emperor. Those assigned to Lorgar found themselves massacred on Istvan V, along with the loyalist Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamander's legions.
Damn.
The nearly 1,000 Custodes sent with Leman Russ to apprehend the traitorous Magnus the Red met a similar fate, as they found themselves cut down in droves by the psychic powers of the Thousand Sons. But the bloodiest struggle the Custodes would endure during the heresy would come not from the Thousand Sons' homeworld of Prospero, nor even from the Siege of Terra itself, but from the veiled events of the war within the Webway. This clandestine war was propagated when Magnus the Red broke the psychic seals surrounding the Imperial Webway project, which would have freed humanity from its reliance on the warp for interstellar travel. This campaign...
Chaos basically attacked in just the right moment. I don't see that as coincidental, right? I mean, there is no coincidence when it comes to Chaos God. Zentich or whatever that god's name is, I'm constantly forgetting that, god of conspiring. He probably came up with that shit, like, okay, they are about to, create their own, web way. We can't have that shit. Imperium is already way too powerful, and Emperor being Emperor. So they just strike at the just right moment.
Saw nearly the entirety of the Custodes, along with the Sisters of Silence, enter the webway portal beneath the Golden Throne, and for 5 long years they battled the hordes of demons and traitor Astartes that sought to breach it. Had they failed, all of Terra would have been overrun by demonic forces, but victory cost the Custodes more than 9,000 dead, as well as the lives of its 3 commanding tribunes.
Ooh.
Such losses meant that, by the time Horus himself came to Terra, the Custodes were a shadow of their former strength.
Seriously.
Though they gave all they could to defend their liege, in the end it was not enough. The Emperor was laid low by the dying blow of the arch-traitor, and forever interred within the Golden Throne. The Custodes turned from the wider Imperium and threw themselves into the duty they had ultimately failed, the defense of the Emperor's mortal form. They now lived beneath the shadow of the Emperor's internment. Many eschewed their armor in shame, whilst others simply abandoned the deep red cloaks of office for a black shroud of mourning.
Oh.
At the behest of Rabute Gilliman, one of the few remaining loyalist Primarchs, the Custodes agreed to the Edict of Restraint and were confined to Terra and the Sol system. Though over the long millennia that followed, the Custodes were able to rebuild their strength, they were bound to never leave the solar system. Aside from a brief, extraordinary intervention to stop the rule of the Mad Ecclesiarch Gog Van Dyer during the Age of Apostasy, the Custodes' actions would be limited to the security of the Imperial Palace and the Sol.
I guess I kind of understand that. Regardless of what happens, Custodes have to be near Emperor. Because Emperor is literally the last thing that is standing, to make sure the warp stays open. As soon as Emperor dies from the Golden Throne, that's it. That's the over for humanity. No warp. I guess basically humanity is cut down, right? You can't interstellar travel anymore, and that's over.
Sol system for the next 10,000 years. The organization of the Custodes reflects their greatest strength, the individual skill and prowess of their members. Each Custodian is part of a sodality, a formation similar to a squad, but with far more tactical flexibility afforded to the individual. Several sodalities make up a shield company, commanded by a shield captain, which in turn form shield hosts. Each host is specialized around a particular duty, from the Solar Watch, which operate the Custodes' fleet of warships, to the Emissaries Imperiatus, who serve as expert diplomats and negotiators, to the Shadowkeepers, who guard the ancient horrors locked within the dungeons beneath the Imperial Palace. These hosts are guided by a council of their shield captains and Vexilius Praetors, their most veteran members and the bearers of a company's Aquila standard. Though several higher ranks exist, many are monikers signifying respect rather than formal positions. Every Custodian is ultimately answerable to the Captain General, an individual elected from their own ranks to be their leader and representative within the Senatorum Imperialis. There exists a further separation between the wider ranks of the Custodes and the Companions, the elite 300 who form the Emperor's personal attendants. This inner circle are directly responsible for the Emperor's safety, maintaining a constant vigil within the Sanctum Imperialis and over the Emperor himself. Each is selected from the wider ranks of the Custodes for some exemplary feat of skill and bravery that elevates them above their already superhuman brethren.
How does that work?
Within their ranks can be found the finest minds.
Adeptus Custodes, all of them are badass on their own, but who are the badass of the baddest? They have to find that out.
And surest blades of the Custodes, and there has not been a single Captain General that did not first serve as a companion. In the days before his internment, it is said that the companions were the Emperor's closest confidants, entrusted with whatever doubts and fears that may have plagued the master of mankind. In addition to their usual training regime, the Custodes conduct blood games amongst themselves. These years-long competitions see one Custodes cast out from the palace and tasked with returning undetected, infiltrating the defenses of the palace, and carrying out a mock assassination of the Emperor or another high-ranking individual. These exercises ensure not only that the Custodes are masters of counter-espionage, understanding every conceivable route an enemy agent could possibly take through the palace, but are more than capable of conducting such work themselves.
They're special forces.
Whether for the gathering of information...
See, that tells me that that's more like special forces than just guards, right? Guards just implies that they just guard the Emperor and they are skilled at, hand-to-hand combat, that's it. But the way he's talking about here is that, they know everything, right? They know how enemy would have think, how espionage works, right? How somebody would infiltrate what. They have to think about everything. They have to be smart and physically able at this point.
Or to strike at a target before it becomes a threat, these skills are invaluable in their sacred task of protecting the Emperor. Being part of the Emperor's personal household, the Custodes continue to be trained in far more than just the art of war. Their educational repertoire, which has persisted since the Heresy, includes topics as varied as the political landscape of Holy Terror to the cultural history of humanity. This is reflected both by their Captain General's inclusion amongst the High Lords, a position in which a mastery over political machinations is a matter of life and death, and in the very naming conventions the Custodes practice. This latter honorific is a key tenet of the Custodes. Upon their successful induction, a newly inaugurated member abandons any name previously given to them, and instead picks one from humanity's collected myths and legends.
That's
the
cool.
archives from which they can pick their name are unparalleled in the wider Imperium, with documentation dating back before even the Dark Age of technology. Upon selection, each custodian inscribes their name on the inside of their armor, with more names awarded as great deeds are performed.
Okay, what is one of the most famous names from the history of the myths? That would be one of the badass names, right? If there is any name. If if anybody who's watching this has deep knowledge of Warhammer 40k, which probably is, right? There are many of you that are watching. I've seen lots of comments. Just name one that is a badass, name, right? Name one Custodes.
It is said that Constantin Valdor, the Custodes' first Captain General, had earned over 1,932 names before his disappearance. From the earliest days of their inception, the Custodes were awarded use of the finest weapons and armor to which the Imperium had access. This tradition has continued, and at present, the Custodes' armory represents one of the mightiest collections of war gear in the known galaxy. They wield the finest suits of powered armor the Imperium can maintain, and bear weapons of rare and irreplaceable design. Even their vehicles are equipped with advanced anti-gravity technology that has only recently been matched by the innovations of Belisarius Cawl, the legendary Martian tech priest. Even so, their capacity to conduct war is nigh unmatched. Such standards extend to their starships as well, and they operate a range of cruisers and battleships that form the core of the Sol System's defensive fleet. Amongst their number is the Emperor's own flagship, the immense Bucephalus. Beyond this, the Custodes garrison a series of 5 starkeeps that protect the navigable routes into the Sol System. In the early 42nd millennium, the Custodes saw a limited deployment across Terra, attempting to stem the flow of madness that followed in the wake of the Great Rift. It was not enough, and when at last the cults of ruin had completed their bloody rituals and a tide of demons poured into the streets of the Throne World itself, it was a force of 4,000 Custodes alongside the Grey Knights and Imperial Fists that would stand against them at the Battle of Lion's Gate.
Okay.
But the servants of the Chaos God Khorne were vicious in form and endless in number.
Oh shit. Khorne versus Custodes, Grey Knights and Iron Fists. I need to see a video on this battle. Sounds badass so far. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. It's a Khorne's agents, right? I should have seen that coming.
In a repeat of the war within the Webway, The Custodes and their allies were forced to pay with their lives to hold every street against the demonic horde. It was only with the intervention of the newly resurrected Robute Guilliman and his Primaris Marines that the costly struggle was at last put to an end. In the face of their failure to protect Terra itself from the touch of the archenemy, it became apparent that the Custodes would have to adapt in order to keep the Emperor safe. Between them, Captain General Trajan Valorous and the newly titled Imperial Regent Guilliman revised the Edict of Restraint, ensuring that while the elite companions would remain by the Emperor's side and secure Terra, the rest of the Custodes would be free to crusade across the galaxy. Once more donning their red cloaks, the Custodes would go forth and be the golden spear tip of Guilliman's Indomitus crusade, bringing the fire of the Emperor to those who had cast him down 10,000 years before.
Really? I didn't know that was a thing. I guess that's part of the newer update that came with the Guilliman's rise. So Guilliman has, certain Custodes with him. I thought Custodes, all of the Custodes are just, there at the palace.
The Custodes have seen the Imperium from its earliest beginning to the present day, with the most venerable of its dreadnought inferred brothers still remembering the early days of the Unification Wars. They recall the Emperor as he stood, not as a god, but as a man, driven by vision and the promise of a bright future.
Why those Custodes don't go, okay, what the fuck are you doing? Emperor hated being called God. Stop worshipping him. I guess he knows that how stupid everybody is, and they would just try to kill him by screaming heresy.
To an Imperium long since lost in the dogma of its institutions, they alone remember its original purpose. To a galaxy ripped in two by the terrors of the warp, they remember when the freedom to leave its influence forever was within their grasp. To a galaxy beset by war and carnage, they remember when the dream of a united humanity and a peaceful future had been so close. When the Emperor first united Terra, they stood by his side. Through the long years of Vigil, they have remained. When at last the days of ending come, if the Imperium is shattered and the last defenses of Terra lay in ruin, they will be there still, blades drawn and hearts steeled against the coming storm.
The Templin Institute.
Yep. Adeptus Custodes, the bad of the bad of the bad, right? Badass MFs, basically. 10 feet tall, closer to, Primarchs than any of the Astartes or the, earlier version of the Astartes, basically. Yeah. Custodes are badass. Really shitty thing happened during the Horus Heresy. They were, I guess, stabbed in the back a lot of times, right? But overall, they're really powerful. Then the newer version, newer patch, I guess, they are riding with Guilliman, right? I thought, all of the Custodes are just around the palace. They are not allowed to do anything, but apparently not so. Yeah. And as far as, the whole story of Warhammer 40k goes, Emperor was really close, right? Really close to doing something and reach something that nobody has done, right? And that's why Chaos Gods were basically scared and did the Horus Heresy. Because, they got, Emperor got their attention so much that they had to do shit like that. So now, come on, I don't care how good Guilliman is, he's not the Emperor, right? So I highly doubt he can reach the distance that Emperor did. So I guess the story needs to, rise from this, like, somebody rise up, a hero, let's just call him hero, as in a hero can be in Warhammer 40k, in the Dark Grim universe, but somebody powerful enough, who might not have power as Emperor, but has an X factor, it factor, whatever you want to call it, who literally leads the humanity like how Emperor did, right? And goes toe-to-toe with Chaos again. And Chaos gets scared again, right? And there's a whole thing. It would be so fucking awesome. Story needs to progress like that, because otherwise the story right now is just humanity is trying, Imperium is trying, Guilliman is trying, but that's all they're going to be able to do, try. Because how are they going to win against Chaos like that? Somebody like Emperor needs to be there. Alright people, that was Adeptus Custodes by the channel The Templin Institute. If you liked my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards, the ink cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.